The highway stretched before me like a black river flecked with silver, glistening in the ceaseless downpour. Rain hammered down upon the windshield, so heavy that even the high beams seemed to vanish into a shifting wall of water. I, Logan Hayes, gripped the steering wheel with white-knuckled determination. A whispering voice in the back of my mind warned me that no shipment deadline was worth risking my life for, yet the compulsion to push forward tugged at me. The darkness of the sky seemed endless. Thunder reverberated through the clouds, and lightning hissed across the heavens in an unrelenting display of fury. In those moments, as the night embraced my truck in its tempestuous arms, my heart was not so much afraid as it was aware that I was alone, pressing onward through the gloom, a solitary soul on a mission few would envy. I remember pressing my foot a bit harder on the gas, trying to outrun the storm, though it laughed at my ambition. My windshield wipers swayed back and forth, valiantly battling the sheets of rain, squeaking now and again like an orchestra out of tune. Trees on the roadside, bending low to the wind's relentless command, blurred into ghostly shapes. It was a hopeless endeavor to see more than a few yards ahead. Yet I kept going, trusting the truck's powerful engine and trusting my own instincts refined from many nights on lonely roads. That was when a streak of emerald light flashed across the sky, so startling that I nearly veered into the guardrail. My heart hammered a staccato beat against my ribs, and for a moment, I thought perhaps a lightning bolt had turned green, or my eyes were playing tricks under the severe strain of the storm. But the light continued, shimmering with an uncanny luster, falling fast. Then came a cacophony of clashing thunder, so loud it rattled the windows in the cab. By the time I managed to steady the wheel, the emerald streak had slammed into the road just ahead, veering in my direction as though drawn to me. A crash, a scream of torn metal, and a weight landed upon the roof of my rig. The entire truck jerked, tires screeching against the wet asphalt. I fought the wheel, half convinced something monstrous had descended, perhaps a piece of space debris or a meteor. All logic fled when I saw the silhouette slide slowly down the hood of my truck. Rain pelted it, flattening its shape against the glass. And then lightning illuminated the figure. I saw a woman, green-skinned, eyes large and luminescent, gasping with obvious pain. Her clothing, if one could call the tattered fabric covering her a garment, was soaked through. Before my brain could process the unreality of it all, she mouthed something, her lips forming a single word I could not hear. I brought the truck to a slippery halt on the shoulder of the deserted highway. Heart pounding, I unbuckled my seat belt, swung the door wide, and jumped into the torrential rain. The storm clawed at me, water streaming into my eyes, blinding me. I made my way around the front, each step accompanied by the angry shudder of the wind. There she was, sprawled across the hood, trying with meager strength to pull herself upright. Her hair, a dark shade reminiscent of forest moss, clung to her face. I stared in disbelief, only half conscious of how bizarre this moment was. "Please," she said, her voice trembling, "help me." Her accent was lilting, each syllable rolling off her tongue with a curious cadence. Though I was drenched to the bone, shock burned in my veins. I reached out, and she nearly collapsed into my arms, her slight frame surprisingly heavy. The softness of her skin, smooth and unnaturally cool, startled me. Yet what struck me most was the fear in her eyes, so profound and genuine that it spoke of dangers far greater than the storm around us. "Get in," I managed to say. My voice shook, but I guided her carefully to the passenger side, opening the door and helping her inside. She groaned, pressing a hand to her shoulder, which I then noticed was streaked with what looked like glowing green blood. Panic tore through me at the thought of her injuries. Still, with the wind howling, I forced myself to stay calm. Once she was inside, I ran back around, jumped into the driver's seat, and shut the door against the swirling tempest. I paused to take a breath, wiping water from my eyes. The cab light revealed her face more clearly. She was undeniably alien, her complexion a faint, leafy hue, her ears elegantly tapered, and her eyes large with elliptical pupils that reminded me of a cat's. Yet she radiated an otherworldly beauty, a certain fragile refinement that made me acutely aware of her vulnerability. Fear flickered in her gaze as she regarded me. I realized, with a wave of compassion, that she was every bit as uncertain of me as I was of her. "Can you talk?" I asked, my voice hushed. "Are you?" She nodded slowly, swallowing hard. Rainwater dripped from her chin. I can speak your tongue," she said, and coughed painfully. "I have studied Earth. I need refuge." Some primal sense of responsibility welled up in me. I rummaged behind my seat for an old blanket, the one my mother had crocheted years ago. I pressed it gently into her shaking hands. She took it with trembling fingers and draped it over her shoulders. Lightning flared outside, and I felt the thunder's vibration deep in my chest. "It's safer if we keep moving," I said, turning the key. The engine rumbled back to life. She merely nodded. There was an urgency in her gaze, and I couldn't resist asking, "Are you hurt bad? Do I need to take you to a hospital?" She shook her head vehemently, as if the suggestion was terrifying in itself. "No," she whispered. "They will be searching. A hospital will bring more danger. Keep driving, please." She paused to steady her voice. "I am called Zarya. I come from beyond the sky." I decided not to question that obvious fact. Instead, I put the truck into gear, merging back onto the rain-slick road, heart thrumming as if it could scarcely contain all the new possibilities. There, in the cab of my 18-wheeler, with water dripping off my hair, I silently wondered what cosmic event had conspired to place this strange woman in my path. The storm outside roared its disapproval, hurling wind and rain against the windows. Yet none of that felt as foreboding as the secrets swirling within Zarya's troubled eyes. We drove through the night, the hum of the engine and the relentless hiss of the storm weaving a mournful lullaby. Now and then, Zarya shivered beside me. I tried to keep the heater blasting. My mind churned with questions. How was she able to speak English? Why did she mention danger so urgently? Who would be searching for her and why? Her breathing steadied after some time, though her face retained an ashen cast. I noticed how she clutched something beneath the blanket, a curious oval device that shimmered in the dim cab light. It looked metallic, yet a subtle glow pulsed within it, almost like a heartbeat. She must have seen my gaze linger, for she lifted it slightly, explaining in a hesitant tone, "This is an artifact, a relic of sorts. It has great power, destructive or salvific, depending on how it is wielded." She sighed, eyes closing briefly as though the weight of the world rested upon her shoulders. "My people," she added in a voice trembling with fatigue, "created it. But there are those among us who would use it to bring chaos here, to Earth, to your planet." I swallowed hard, trying to reconcile her words with any frame of reference I possessed. There were so many unbelievable aspects to it, yet the sincerity in her voice resonated with me. I kept my eyes on the road, aware that my hands were shaking. The storm raged on, lightning branching across the sky like serpentine rivers of light. "If you're from somewhere else," I ventured, "how did you end up here? Is Earth in danger?" She nodded, pressing her fingers carefully to her injured shoulder. "I took this artifact," she explained quietly, "to prevent the destruction that would follow if it were misused. There are many factions among my people. Some wanted to harness this power to subjugate worlds, to reshape them as they saw fit. Earth is not as primitive as some believe, but it is still vulnerable. They would have come here, with you none the wiser, until it was too late. I couldn't allow that to happen." I glanced over at her, momentarily ignoring the road. Her luminous green eyes locked with mine, and I felt a profound weight behind her gaze, as though she had endured burdens beyond my comprehension. "So you stole it," I whispered. "They're coming after you, to retrieve it." She bowed her head in affirmation. "Indeed. I'm no warrior, but I did what I thought was right." Then she drew a shuddering breath, clearly in pain. "I'm sorry. I never meant to pull you into this. I fell into your path, literally." Her words stirred something protective inside me. "Look," I said, "you're hurt, and I don't know anything about interplanetary politics or artifacts of doom. But if you need help, I'll do my best. I'm just one man, though. Not sure how much I can do." Despite the doubt in my tone, I felt a fierce desire to shield her from any threat that might come. She offered me a tired smile, wincing soon after. "Your kindness is already more than I hoped for. We must find a place to hide, to regroup. If you have allies, people you trust, perhaps they can keep us safe while I figure out the next step." I thought about it. My routes and truck stops had given me a wide network of acquaintances, but precious few I trusted implicitly. Yet an idea came to me. There's an old rest area a few miles ahead, I said. It's off the main route. Hardly anyone goes there at this hour. At least you can rest, and we can see to your wound. She nodded once, but her posture sagged. Yes, she whispered. Please. I need rest. I'm so sorry. Then she drifted, eyes half-lidded, the exhaustion overtaking her battered form. We continued through the deluge, the tires splashing along soaked highways while thunder rolled overhead like the wrath of ancient gods. Moments stretched into minutes, minutes into miles, and soon enough I pulled off onto a deserted slip road. The old rest area was a lonely place, one I had used as a quick pit stop on earlier trips. Shadows cloaked broken vending machines, flickering light posts, and an abandoned visitor's kiosk. It was enough to make the hairs on my arms stand on end. Yet it was remote and silent, exactly what we needed for a moment's respite. I parked my rig under a dim light that buzzed and flickered, turning to check on Zarya. Her eyes fluttered open at the halt. She attempted to straighten, wincing as she moved. Let me see that wound, I offered gently. She shrugged the blanket aside. My heart lurched at the sight of her shoulder. A shallow cut extended from collarbone to arm, but instead of red blood, a pale green fluid trickled from it, glowing faintly. She noticed my alarm and tried to force a wan smile. I rifled through a small first aid kit I kept behind the seat, retrieving antiseptic wipes and bandages. I have no idea if human medicine will help you, I admitted, but it's better than nothing. She only nodded, lips tight as she endured the sting. We cleaned the wound as best we could, though I was mindful that her alien physiology might respond unpredictably. She hissed in pain, tears gathering at the corners of her eyes. But at last, we wrapped her shoulder in gauze, securing it with medical tape. She slumped back in the seat, trembling. Thank you, she whispered. I was so scared. They were chasing me in orbit. I managed to slip through, but not unscathed. She touched the artifact under the blanket. Now, they will search the planet, unless they think I died upon impact. But they will not give up easily. I watched her with a mixture of compassion and lingering disbelief. If they come for you, how do they plan on tracking you? Is there some device on that artifact? She shook her head. No, but they have ways. Detection technology advanced far beyond your satellites. I fear they can scan for my genetic signature. Though the storm might be helping us, masking signals. This world's electromagnetic fields are strong in places, especially during storms. I exhaled slowly, leaning back against the seat. The relentless rain battered the roof of the truck. We'll lie low for now, I said. Try to figure out a plan. So, your name is Zarya. Mine's Logan Hayes. A faint smile curved her lips. Logan, she said softly, as though tasting the name. She set her gaze on me. Why are you helping me, Logan Hayes? The question lingered in the air. I could have given many answers. Sympathy, curiosity, a sense of wonder that overshadowed my doubts. But in the end, I merely shrugged. You needed help, I said quietly. That's reason enough. She blinked, as though stunned by the simplicity of my response. Then her features softened, and I saw gratitude flicker across her face. For the first time since she appeared, some measure of tension lifted from her brow, as though my words offered a glimmer of hope in the darkness. Yet we both knew the night was young, and our troubles had only begun. In that lonely rest area, with rain drenching the world beyond the windshield, I felt as though we stood at the threshold of an unseen realm. I checked the sky, half expecting to see lights of an alien craft. Instead, I saw only the swirling gloom, pierced occasionally by silver forks of lightning. For now, it seemed, we were safe. But morning would bring fresh challenges, and I suspected the moment we moved, we would risk drawing the attention of those who hunted her. Zarya leaned her head against the seat, breath shallow but steadying. I considered telling her to lie down in the bunk behind the cab, but she was already drifting into a doze. So I shifted the truck to a better angle, switching off the headlights and letting the engine idle. If anything approached, the truck's sensors or my own vigilance might detect it in time. Weariness tugged at my eyelids, but adrenaline kept me alert. I found myself staring at the artifact beneath the blanket, its faint pulse capturing my imagination. What secret lay locked inside? And what did Zarya intend to do with it? We must have passed the night in a fragile peace, for when I awoke at dawn, the storm had lessened to a soft drizzle. Daylight cast a gray pall over the rest area, revealing cracked pavement and overgrown weeds. I rubbed the sleep from my eyes and realized Zarya was awake too, observing me quietly. Her wound, from what I could tell, no longer oozed that strange, glowing fluid. "Morning," I offered, feeling an odd sense of familiarity, as though we were merely two travelers who had shared a night's lodging. She mustered a small smile. "Yes," she replied. "Morning." I started the truck moving again, the drizzle pattering across the windshield. My mind churned with the reality of our situation. With an extraterrestrial fugitive riding shotgun and some unknown threat potentially scouring the planet for her, I couldn't go about my usual business. The shipping run was out of the question. My employer would likely be furious, but I couldn't bring Zarya into a crowded warehouse district, nor could I risk her being seen by the wrong people. "We need somewhere discreet," I thought aloud. "Someplace you can recover and figure out how to deal with them." I paused. "Is there a name for your pursuers? Or for your home? Maybe that'll help me understand more." She wrapped the blanket around her shoulders, gazed distant. "My people come from a planet called Imrith, far from here," she began. "There are many among us who revere knowledge and harmony, but a faction known as the Dracaran Circle seeks power above all else. They discovered this artifact, an ancient device, rumored to have the capacity to harness cosmic energy for terraforming or, in worst cases, planetary destruction. The Circle believes Earth should be reshaped to suit their ends, to become a strategic outpost in this part of the galaxy." I felt a cold dread rise in me. So basically, they want to conquer us from the shadows, and this device would help them do it. She nodded solemnly. "Yes, I couldn't let that happen, so I stole it. They chased me through space. I hoped to hide it on Earth, to find someone who could keep it safe. But they caught up to me sooner than I anticipated." My hands tightened on the wheel. "Well, you're here now," I said. "We'll find a way to protect it. And you." We continued down the road, passing small towns. Diner signs flickered in the wet dawn, and the occasional car splashed through the puddles. A gas station on the outskirts of a sleepy rural community provided a chance for me to refuel and gather a few supplies. Zarya stayed hidden in the truck's sleeper compartment while I stepped out. My heart pounded, worried that if some unidentified craft soared overhead, I wouldn't be there to protect her. But no such occurrence marred the morning. I picked up bandages, bottled water, and a modest set of groceries. My truck's cupboards were often stocked with non-perishables, cans of soup, granola bars, the basics for a traveling loner. Now I needed more. I also grabbed a wide-brimmed hat, sunglasses, and some clothing that might help Zarya blend in if it came to that, although I had no illusions about the difficulty of hiding her green skin. Returning to the cab, I found her sitting upright, fingers tracing the artifact's smooth surface. She looked up, relief crossing her face. She must have feared I would abandon her. I handed her a plastic bag. "Got you some clothes," I mumbled. "Probably not a perfect fit, but it's the best I could do on short notice." She hesitated, tears shimmering in her eyes. "Thank you, Logan." I felt an odd warmth stirring in my chest. "Sure," I said. "We'll figure this out together." I paused. "But we need to keep moving. If there's a place I know that's off the grid enough to buy us time, it's an old friend's ranch. He lives way off the main road. Hardly any neighbors. He owes me a favor." Her lips parted as though she might ask more, but she only nodded. "Lead on," she whispered. And so, we set forth once more, forging a path across winding backroads. It took the better part of the day to reach the ranch. As the skies gradually cleared, sunlight broke through the clouds, revealing vast swaths of farmland that glowed with renewed life after the storm. My friend Walter, an ex-military man in his late 50s, had settled in a remote patch of land nestled in gentle hills. Though I had not visited in some time, I recalled his friendly nature and discreet tendencies. If anyone would not ask too many questions about an injured traveler, it was Walter. We could only pray he would extend the same courtesy to an extraterrestrial being. We arrived in the late afternoon. I turned the truck onto a gravel driveway lined with tall grass. An old, two-story farmhouse rose at the end, paint peeling from weathered wooden boards, a wraparound porch strewn with chairs that had seen better days. Beyond the house stretched fields dotted with hay bales, and farther yet lay a dense line of trees. The place felt quiet and isolated, just what we needed. Walter appeared on the porch, wearing jeans, a checkered shirt, and a rifle slung across his broad shoulders. His gray mustache twitched with curiosity as he spied my truck. I parked in the dirt yard, killed the engine, and hopped out. The warmth of the sun felt almost foreign after that interminable night storm. He ambled closer, suspicion and concern mingling on his features. "Logan," he called. "What in blazes you doing here, son? Everything all right?" I forced a grin. "Hey, Walt. Sorry for dropping in unannounced. I got a bit of a complicated situation. Need a place to lie low for a spell." He shifted the rifle, squinting at me. "Complicated, eh? I suppose you mean more complicated than usual." He sniffed, glancing over my shoulder at the truck. "All right, let's talk inside." I nodded. Before we entered, I quickly advised Zarya to wait until I signaled her. She peered at me from the passenger seat, nerves evident. I gave her what I hoped was a reassuring nod. Then I followed Walt into his house, bracing myself to explain something that hardly seemed believable. The interior of Walt's home was as rustic as I remembered. Wooden floors that creaked underfoot, mismatched furniture, and the faint smell of pipe tobacco. We settled at his kitchen table, a sturdy relic bearing decades of scratches. I saw him eye the worry in my posture. And so, in halting sentences, I told him I picked up an unusual hitchhiker, that she was an outcast on the run from very dangerous people, and that we needed a place to hide briefly. Walt grunted, leaning back in his chair. "You know I'm no stranger to hush-hush matters from my time in service," he said slowly. "I can keep things quiet. But who the heck is this lady really? Some kind of fugitive? The law after her?" I hesitated. "Not the law. Something else. It's big, Walt. Bigger than I can explain. But I'd never ask if it wasn't critical." He scratched his chin, then exhaled. "Ah, hell. You helped me once, that time with my property dispute. You got me out of a tight spot. I suppose I owe you." He paused, studying me. "All right. Bring her in. We'll talk more." I stepped outside and waved Zarya over. She emerged cautiously, wearing a hooded sweatshirt with the hood pulled low, her face partially hidden. She walked with tentative steps toward the porch. Walt stood on the threshold, arms folded across his chest. I saw the flicker of shock in his eyes the moment he glimpsed her greenish complexion. To his credit, he did not recoil or exclaim. He merely tightened his jaw and held the door open. Inside, as she pulled down the hood, Walter stared openly but not unkindly. "Now I've seen a lot in my day," he muttered, "but this takes the cake." Zarya bowed her head slightly. "I am sorry for the intrusion," she said. "Logan thought you might be able to grant us safety." She trailed off, uncertain how to phrase her predicament in human terms. Walt considered her carefully. "If Logan trusts you," he said at length, "then I guess I do too. You look half dead, miss. Let's get you some real rest. We'll figure out the rest come dinner time." A wave of relief seemed to pass through Zarya. She glanced at me with a grateful smile, her eyes reflecting exhaustion and silent thanks. Walter guided us to a spare bedroom at the back of the house, a modest space containing a small bed, dresser, and a single window overlooking the fields. The evening light cast a golden glow through the glass, illuminating floating dust motes. As she sat gingerly on the bed's edge, her shoulders sagged in fatigue. It occurred to me just how frail she looked, that cosmic device clutched under one arm. I left her to rest, stepping outside with Walter to talk in hushed voices. We made our way to the porch, where he leaned his rifle against a beam and turned to me. "Want to tell me what's really going on?" he pressed. I ran a hand through my hair, struggling to present an explanation that wouldn't sound like a fever dream. "Walt," I said slowly, "she's not from here. Another planet." He started to speak, but I lifted a hand. "I know. It's wild. But I saw the proof with my own eyes. She crashed onto my truck in the middle of last night's storm. Something about people chasing her, wanting a device she stole. If they get it, Earth is in trouble." He watched my face, expression grave. "And you believe all this? You sure she ain't pulling a fast one?" I recalled the fear in her eyes, her luminous blood, the sincerity trembling in her voice. "I do," I said. "I can't prove it right now, but I do. Please, we just need a few days here, off the grid, so she can heal and figure out her next step." Walter's gaze swept over the rolling fields. "This world's gone crazy enough. Why not add aliens to the mix?" He sighed, hooking his thumbs in his belt loops. "You two can stay. I'll keep an eye out for anything suspicious. But if some spaceship or men in black suits come stomping around, don't expect me not to protect what's mine. I gripped his shoulder in gratitude. Thanks, Walt. I really appreciate it. That evening, we gathered around his worn wooden table. Zarya ate sparingly, sampling the simple meal with a mix of curiosity and caution. Walter watched her with measured curiosity, though occasionally his eyes darted to me as if to confirm he wasn't caught in a strange dream. She told us a bit more about her home, the unending sky of emerald-tinted lavender at dusk, her people's advanced technology, and the schism that drove her to steal the artifact. The more she spoke, the more her voice took on a sorrowful cadence, as though she carried the regrets of a civilization on her shoulders. Logan says we have only a few days, she stated quietly, folding her hands in her lap. I don't want to endanger your home, Walter, so I'll try to find a way to contact someone. Perhaps not from Imrith, but there may be other peaceful races who can secure the artifact or neutralize it before my pursuers arrive. Walter shrugged, scratching the stubble on his chin. Well, you're talking about stuff that's way above my pay grade, he said. But I do know a thing or two about hiding from a threat. You two should stay low inside the house. No going into town, not unless you can pass for normal. I'll make sure no one comes snooping around. We nodded in agreement. Then, a knock at the door shattered the moment. My heart lurched. Walter jerked upright, hand reflexively moving toward his rifle. Zarya tensed, eyes wide. Walt motioned for us to remain still, then strode to the front door and pulled it open a crack. Cool evening air drifted inside. Walt, a voice called. You in there? It's Sam. Walt relaxed visibly and opened the door further. Sam, a neighboring farmer, stood there, hat in hand, looking uncertain. Sorry to bother you. Heard your truck just now. Wanted to make sure everything was all right. He glanced past Walt's shoulder, curiosity lighting his face when he glimpsed me. Didn't know you had company. My pulse pounded, praying Sam couldn't see Zarya from his vantage. She had already slipped into the spare bedroom with uncanny grace, but I worried about her footsteps. Walt shrugged, leaning casually against the doorframe. Yep, a friend's passing through. We're fine, Sam. Appreciate the concern. Sam nodded slowly, face thoughtful. All right then. Just checking. Storm tore up some fences down my way. Wondered if you saw any damage. Nah, everything's fine here, Walt replied, shifting his stance. I'll take a closer look tomorrow, though. Appreciate it. Sam lingered a moment, eyes scanning the shadows. Then he backed away. Okay, you two take it easy. Let me know if you need any help. With that, he headed back down the porch steps, and Walt shut the door. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. Zarya emerged from the hallway, relief etched across her features. Walter set the rifle aside, shaking his head with a faint grin. First test passed, he said dryly. We'll have to be ready for more drop-ins. That's how it is out here. Folks look out for each other. Zarya's expression turned contemplative. Your people's sense of community is admirable, she said softly. On Imrith, we once had such bonds. But fear and power struggles have eroded them. Walter snorted gently. Humans aren't exactly shining examples of unity, either, he retorted. But he didn't press the point. Instead, he told us to get some sleep, promising he would stay alert for any sign of trouble. In the days that followed, Zarya convalesced in that back bedroom, rarely venturing out into the main areas of the house unless Walt was off patrolling the property. I divided my time between helping Walt with chores and assisting Zarya as she experimented with the artifact. She insisted it was crucial to test its functions in a controlled environment, though we had to be extremely careful not to attract attention. One evening, she requested that I join her in the barn, a rustic structure with high rafters and a dirt floor. Moonlight streamed through the gaps in the wooden siding, illuminating floating specks of hay dust. She explained that the artifact's power needed the presence of a resonant life form to unlock its highest potential, hinting that perhaps an empathic bond of sorts existed between the user and the device. She placed the artifact on a bale of straw, kneeling beside it. When I tried to unlock it in orbit, I lacked the stability to refine its function. It's why I crashed, she confessed, a faint blush coloring her cheeks. I tilted my head. But you said it could destroy planets? Should we really be messing with it here? Her eyes shone with a quiet determination. I need to confirm it can be contained. Otherwise, it's only a ticking bomb. They will come for it, Logan. We must be prepared. Tentatively, I joined her. She urged me to set one hand atop the oval surface, where the pulsating glow seemed strongest. At first, I felt nothing, just a faint hum. But then the artifact's inner radiance surged, and a curious warmth seeped through my palm, spiraling up my arm. My heart thundered in my chest. I glanced at Zarya in alarm. She nodded for me to keep going. The barn seemed to fade, replaced by a swirling vision of distant stars. My mind opened to an alien symphony of light and darkness, as though the device bridged the gap between my thoughts and the cosmos. Sensing my trepidation, Zarya whispered softly, "Steady, don't fight it." Breathing ragged, I willed my heart to calm. In that mental realm, I glimpsed faint echoes of Imrith, towers that glimmered in a rose-hued sky, fields of shimmering crystals, and distant suns that bathed the landscape in gentle light. Then, just as swiftly, I felt a sharp pang of fear, as if the device itself was showing me the threat that loomed, a battalion of dark vessels, poised to subdue worlds, each armed with lethal capabilities. I gasped, pulling my hand away. The vision ended abruptly. Zarya's eyes were wide, tears pooling in them. "You saw it?" she asked, voice trembling. "You saw what could happen?" I nodded, struggling for breath. "Ah, yes. It's horrifying." She hung her head. "Now you understand. We can't let them take this back." She pressed a hand to her chest. "But perhaps, if we bond with the artifact, we can disrupt their technology. Keep them at bay. I'm not certain, but we must try." That moment forged a deeper connection between us. We left the barn in silence, the night air cool against our skin. I walked her back inside, where she curled up in bed, hands shaking from the emotional toll. I lingered by the doorway, my mind spinning. All my life, I had worried about bills, job security, the small trifles of day-to-day survival. Now, I stood on the cusp of events that might change Earth's fate. I didn't sleep much that night, haunted by the cosmic glimpses seared into my memory. 2 days later, trouble arrived. It came at dawn, in the form of a shrill keening that tore through the sky. I had been standing on the porch, sipping weak coffee from a battered mug. Walter was in the yard, feeding the chickens. The noise rose in intensity, causing the animals to scatter, clucking in panic. My own ears rang painfully. Zarya bolted out the door, eyes wide. "They're here," she hissed. And indeed, the clouds overhead parted, revealing a sleek, dark craft hovering silently. My stomach tightened. Walter cursed, dashing to the porch to grab his rifle. Zarya latched onto my arm, trembling. "We must hide," she whispered. But it was too late. A lance of light shot from the underside of the craft, slamming into the ground just beyond the barn. The earth shook beneath our feet. Dust plumed in the air, and I heard Walter shout something as he raised the rifle, aiming at a figure emerging from the settling debris. My eyes watered, trying to discern shapes. Then I saw them, 2 tall, imposing silhouettes wreathed in swirling energy fields. They moved with predatory grace, wearing what appeared to be advanced, form-fitting armor that shimmered with a metallic sheen. Zarya clutched the artifact under her hoodie, face-stricken. "They've tracked me," she said, voice hoarse. "These are Dracaran agents, probably an advanced team. We can't let them near the artifact." Walter steadied the rifle, taking aim at the nearest figure. A single shot rang out, echoing across the ranch. The bullet sparked against an invisible barrier and ricocheted off, burying itself in a fence post. The alien advanced, raising a gloved hand that crackled with energy. Walter stumbled back, face pale. "Logan, get her out of here," he shouted, reloading in a frenzy. I seized Zarya's hand and pulled her around the house, weaving between scattered farm implements. Another beam of energy tore through the air where we'd just stood, leaving a smoldering hole in the porch steps. My heart pounded, adrenaline screaming through my veins. I glanced over my shoulder to see Walter returning fire, though his shots were futile against their shields. Zarya held the artifact close. "We have to use it," she gasped, panic flaring in her eyes. "If we don't, they'll destroy everything." I paused by the truck, fumbling for the keys in my pocket. "Get in," I told her. "We'll lure them away." She nodded, breath ragged, and scrambled into the passenger seat. I climbed behind the wheel, started the engine, and floored the accelerator. Gravel spat behind us as the truck lurched forward, careening around the house. The alien duo spotted our motion, pivoting in eerie unison. Another lance of energy slammed into the ground just short of our truck's rear tires, sending a shower of dirt and stones into the air. We roared onto the dusty farm road, dust clouds billowing behind. I saw, in the side mirror, the dark craft hovering overhead like a malevolent bird of prey. "Hold on," I shouted to Zarya, shifting gears as we sped past fields of wilted cornstalks. She clung to the seat, wincing as every bump jarred her injured shoulder. The artifact glowed fiercely, as though responding to her distress. Before long, the craft soared over us, unleashing a barrage of bright beams that streaked the sky. One shot grazed the truck's trailer, leaving a scorched groove along the metal. I let loose a string of curses, turning the wheel sharply to veer onto a smaller, less maintained road. Dust enveloped us, and the truck rattled over the uneven terrain. "We can't outrun them forever," Zarya cried, voice taut with dread. "We have to fight back somehow, or they'll keep coming." My hands trembled on the wheel. "What do we do? I'm just a trucker, Zarya." Yet deep down, I felt a resonance from the artifact, a memory of that strange barn vision. Something told me that my involvement was more than chance. She eyed me, a determined set to her jaw. "Pull over. Let's see if we can channel the device. It responds to your energy too." My blood ran cold at the thought of confronting those invaders head-on, but her urgency left little choice. I wrenched the steering wheel, bringing the truck to a skidding halt on a deserted stretch of road flanked by tall pines. The craft circled overhead, searching for us among the dust. Soon enough, I heard the whir of some scout drones slicing the air. We jumped down from the cab, hurrying into the tree line. "Here," Zarya said, pressing the artifact into my hands. It felt warm, pulsing like a living heart. "Focus," she instructed. "Reach into it like before. We need to disrupt their systems." I swallowed hard, bracing myself against a thick pine trunk. "I'll try," I managed. We crouched, pressed back into the shadows. The artifact brightened in my hands, responding to my concentration. I closed my eyes, recalling the cosmic panorama it had shown me. At first, my thoughts scattered, but then I imagined swirling lines of energy connecting the artifact to the craft above. A jolt of foreign power raced through me, enough to tear a gasp from my throat. Zarya placed her hand atop mine, steadying me. "Good," she murmured. "Now disrupt them. Picture their systems failing, their signals tangled." In my mind's eye, I envisioned the craft's sleek hull, the glowing panels that likely housed advanced technology. I concentrated on static, on jamming frequencies, hoping the artifact could enact my will. The device hummed, brightening until it hurt to look at. I sensed a reaction overhead, a sudden hiccup in the craft's flight pattern. The whir of the drone faltered. Then the sky exploded in noise. The craft wobbled, losing altitude. An eerie flicker passed over the vehicle's surface, as though its cloaking or shielding glitched. I heard a roar of rage, presumably from the Dracaran agents on board. Zarya's face shone with resolve as she channeled her own mental energy into the artifact. "More," she whispered through gritted teeth. "We need them fully disabled." Summoning every ounce of focus, I pressed forward. The device vibrated, growing nearly too hot to hold. My mind brimmed with an alien symphony of energies, forging a link between me and the craft above. I heard a crackle of electricity, and then a wave of feedback shot back through the artifact. My vision went white with pain, and I collapsed to my knees, nearly dropping it. Zarya clung to my arm, screaming something I couldn't make out over the ringing in my ears. When my vision cleared, the craft spun wildly, smoke trailing from one of its thrusters. It veered away in a desperate maneuver, eventually disappearing behind a nearby ridge. A moment later, the ground shook faintly, and a plume of black smoke rose in the distance. We had forced it down. Panting heavily, I stared at Zarya. Sweat beaded her forehead, and her green skin looked paler than usual. Yet her eyes shimmered with triumph. "We did it," she breathed. "But they're not finished. The Dracaran circle rarely surrenders easily. We must go to them, destroy their means of calling reinforcements." My stomach sank. "Confront them?" I echoed. "That's suicide." She gripped my hand. "If they repair the craft or signal their mothership, the entire planet could be threatened. We have an opportunity to stop them now, while they're vulnerable." In that harrowing moment, I realized that backing down was not an option. The sense of duty overcame my fear, and so, swallowing the lump in my throat, I agreed. We climbed back into the truck, though it bore fresh scorch marks. The engine coughed once, but roared back to life. Winding our way along dirt tracks and overgrown paths, we followed the smoke. My arms trembled from the strain of controlling the vehicle on uneven ground, but a stubborn resolve fueled me. Zarya remained silent, hands hovering protectively over the artifact. Before long, we reached a clearing where the downed craft lay. It was smaller than a typical spaceship, perhaps a landing vessel, large enough to carry a few elite soldiers. Part of its hull was torn open, revealing sparking innards and twisted metal. Flames licked at the wreckage. We parked behind a cluster of rocks and thick brush. I killed the engine, and we cautiously stepped out. Thick smoke blurred the scene, stinging our eyes, but we could make out movement among the debris. The two Dracaran agents from before, their armor now scorched, prowled around the crash site, likely retrieving gear. My chest constricted with dread. They looked even more imposing up close, tall and lean, with elongated faces partially masked by silver visors. One of them barked commands in a guttural language that resonated with malice. Zarya tugged my sleeve. "They're trying to power up the emergency beacon," she whispered urgently. "We have to act now." "Right," I muttered, voice trembling despite my resolve. With shaky fingers, I lifted the artifact. Its glow was faint. Clearly, our efforts had drained it. Zarya placed her palm upon its surface, closing her eyes in concentration. She motioned for me to do the same. Though the device still vibrated in my grip, it felt weaker. Whether from overuse or damage, I wasn't certain. We needed a more direct approach. I glanced at a swirling cluster of cables lying in the open hull, connected to some spherical apparatus pulsing with electric arcs. "That must be the beacon," Zarya noted, following my gaze. Just then, one of the Dracaran saw us. A guttural snarl escaped his lips, and he raised a weapon that crackled with pale blue energy. I shoved Zarya behind me, my heart hammering. The weapon discharged, blasting a tree trunk nearby, sending splinters flying. My instincts screamed for me to run, but something deeper drove me forward. I raised the artifact, trying to summon the earlier synergy. A flicker of power pulsed through my arms, launching a wave of static energy at the Dracaran. It collided with his shield, sending sparks dancing. He staggered, armor sizzling, but his comrade lunged to his aid, pressing a device on his wrist that visibly recharged their protective field. Panic clawed at me. Our advantage was waning. Zarya stepped to my side, features set in grim determination. She focused on the artifact, chanting something in a language I didn't recognize. The relic blazed with sudden intensity. Bolts of emerald light arced from it, striking the Dracaran's weapon, causing it to malfunction with a deafening crack. The agent hurled the smoking gun aside, shrieking in fury. Sensing a narrow window of opportunity, I sprinted for the cables connected to the spherical beacon. One of the Dracaran leaped to intercept me, but Zarya slammed him with a wave of energy. He hit the ground, armor scraping across the wreckage, still struggling to stand. Adrenaline surged in my veins. I reached the beacon, tearing at the cables with bare hands. Sparks flew, searing my palms, but I yanked them free. The sphere dimmed slightly, though not completely. I spotted a metal rod that looked like it might act as a power coupling. With a wild yell, I bashed it against the beacon's surface. The device cracked, a high-pitched whine piercing the air. By now, the second Dracaran had recovered. He aimed a smaller handheld blaster at me. Zarya cried out a warning. I braced for impact. Then, from behind a broken piece of hull, Walter emerged, rifle in hand. He took a single shot. The bullet pinged off the Dracaran's visor, distracting him long enough for me to slam the artifact onto the beacon. A violent pulse of green radiance erupted, the beacon imploding in a shower of sparks. An agonized roar erupted from the Dracaran agent. The feedback surge rippled through the craft's wreckage, igniting stored energy cells. A chain reaction of explosions roared across the crash site. "Get down," Walter hollered, diving for cover. I grabbed Zarya's hand, dragging her behind a nearby boulder as flames and shrapnel tore through the air. The concussive force rattled my teeth, and a searing flash left me momentarily blinded. When I dared lift my head, the clearing was filled with acrid smoke, the wreckage engulfed in raging flames. I glimpsed the twisted silhouettes of the Dracaran agents lying motionless near the debris. For a moment, all was a haze of swirling dust, cinders, and the roaring inferno. As the conflagration subsided, I coughed, pushing myself to my feet. Zarya lay sprawled beside me, chest heaving. She raised her head, dazed, but alive. Walter stumbled over, face blackened with soot, but otherwise unharmed. "You folks all right?" he croaked. Zarya nodded, albeit weakly. I offered her my arm, helping her stand. Then I surveyed the smoldering ruin. The beacon was destroyed, the craft in no condition to be salvaged, and the two Dracaran lay still, their armor charred. A wave of relief washed over me, tempered by the knowledge that this might only be the start of a larger conflict. Yet as minutes passed, nothing else came from the sky. No reinforcements, no orbiting dreadnought. Perhaps the main Dracaran forces believed our downed foes had simply failed. Maybe they had retreated altogether. Regardless, for the moment, we were safe. In the aftermath, Walter helped us return to the farmhouse. We sat on the porch in exhausted silence, watching the sun sink behind the hills. Zarya cradled the artifact in her lap, as though comforting a wounded child. Its glow had grown faint, a gentle pulsing that matched her heartbeat. I felt deep gratitude, aware that we had thwarted a significant threat, at least for now. Earth remained free, protected by our desperate gambit. Walter reached out and gently patted my shoulder. "Didn't expect to spend my retirement fighting off alien invaders," he muttered. "But I'm mighty proud of you too." Zarya glanced at him, a tender smile forming. "You risked much," she said quietly. "I owe you a great debt." He brushed it off with a gruff shrug. "Don't mention it. Just, next time, maybe give me a heads up." We shared a weary laugh. Then Zarya turned to me, her expression poignant. "Logan," she said softly, "you saved me. You saved your world, too. That was remarkable. I never expected such generosity." My heart thumped in my chest, a wave of emotion I couldn't quite articulate. "I just did what felt right," I answered, somewhat lamely. But I knew it was the truth. Walter cleared his throat, rising stiffly from his chair. "I'll, check the perimeter. Make sure no more uninvited guests drop by." He winked, then ambled off, leaving Zarya and me alone with the fading daylight. The hush of the evening air enveloped us. Zarya studied the horizon, where streaks of orange and pink illuminated drifting clouds. After a few moments, she reached out to grasp my hand. "I have nowhere else to go," she confessed. "Even if my people assume I perished, I can't return to them. The Dracaran Circle's infiltration remains a threat, but for now, the artifact is safe here with me. I might stay if you'll let me." For a moment, I thought of my old life, the truck routes, the endless highways, the solitary dinners in roadside diners. It all seemed so small now, overshadowed by the immensity of what had transpired. Yet a surge of warmth blossomed within me at her words. I'd like that," I murmured. "I can't promise life on Earth is simple, but we'll manage." She leaned against my shoulder, her voice hushed with gratitude. "Then I will remain, at least until I discover a way to ensure the artifact won't threaten your planet, or any other." She inhaled the night air. "And maybe I'll learn to live among you humans." A smile tugged at my lips, though tears pricked at my eyes. I wrapped an arm around her, drawing her close. We lingered there in the twilight, as the crickets began their gentle serenade. The night no longer felt foreboding. Instead, it whispered of hope and new beginnings. In the weeks that followed, my life changed more than I ever thought possible. Walter allowed us to stay on his ranch temporarily, though he teased me mercilessly, calling me the cosmic cowboy. Zarya's wound healed with surprising speed, aided by a mixture of improvised medical care and her own regenerative biology. She slowly ventured outside during the quiet hours, learning about Earth's flora, marveling at the horses in Walter's stable, or the gentle sway of tree branches in the wind. She confessed that her planet, Imrith, had long lost many natural wonders due to over-industrialization. So seeing Earth's landscapes brought her immense joy, an emotional balm after the horrors she endured. When we discovered local wildlife or strolled through fields of wildflowers, her green eyes lit with a childlike awe, as though Earth were an unspoiled paradise. Watching her delight stirred a warm pride in me, despite all the planet's flaws. It reminded me that, for someone who had only known the hush of metal corridors and cosmic dread, the simple marvels of nature were gifts beyond price. Word traveled slowly in Walter's remote community, and fortunately, no one questioned why a hooded figure sometimes walked at my side. We kept our heads down, mindful of prying eyes. Zarya dyed her hair a darker shade with a makeshift solution of coffee and walnut shells, though her skin remained distinctly green. We found that in limited light, or from a distance, she could pass as someone with a medical condition. Strangely enough, in a world rife with daily hustle, few people looked too closely, especially if a kind word or polite nod was given. We toyed with ways to neutralize the artifact permanently. Zarya speculated about certain cosmic alignments or rare elements that could dampen its power. Yet each idea carried risks or demanded technology Earth did not possess. Even so, the device lay quiescent now, as though drained by that final, desperate confrontation. For the time being, it posed no imminent threat. Zarya surmised the Dracaran Circle, having lost their advance team, might need months or years to mount another campaign, if they decided Earth was worth the effort. We hoped the cost we inflicted served as a deterrent. Meanwhile, my employer left countless voicemails, bewildered and increasingly irate about my sudden disappearance. I eventually phoned him, claiming a family emergency had forced me off the route. It wasn't entirely untrue. Zarya felt like family in a bizarre, cosmic sense. But that conversation underscored my new reality. I couldn't just climb back into my rig and resume deliveries as if nothing had happened. My world had irrevocably changed. Walter offered a solution. He had a dilapidated trailer near the edge of his property, once used by a ranch hand. It lacked modern comforts, but with some elbow grease, it could become livable. I jumped at the chance, and Zarya agreed. We spent days cleaning it out, replacing broken windows, patching the roof. Step by step, we shaped it into a cozy refuge, planting flowers outside and rigging a solar panel that Walter had stored in his barn. It wasn't glamorous, but it was ours. Zarya took particular joy in small domestic rituals, like washing dishes or hanging curtains, enthralled by the concept of a daily routine that wasn't overshadowed by cosmic strife. At times, I found her humming unfamiliar tunes that reminded me of wind chimes in a gentle breeze. She taught me a few words in her native tongue, Xylatha, meaning sunrise, Valori, meaning trust, Marahan, meaning gratitude. I stumbled over the alien syllables, but she guided me with patience. And so, we settled into a quiet rhythm. Occasionally, I'd take my truck out for short runs to earn some money, always mindful to keep the route local and avoid overnight hauls that would leave Zarya alone for too long. She, in turn, used her technological know-how to repair some of Walter's aging machinery. Once, she even modified a rusty tractor to run more efficiently, leaving Walt scratching his head in amazement. "You got yourself a real whiz there," he told me, shaking his head in disbelief. As seasons shifted, the threat of Dracaran reprisal hung over us like a distant cloud, but no sign of them appeared. Perhaps they were still licking their wounds, or perhaps we had slipped beneath their notice. Either way, life found a semblance of peace. Zarya and I grew closer, sharing late-night conversations under star-studded skies. She spoke of her home world's once vibrant forests, now replaced by towering spires of metal. I told her of my childhood memories, fishing with my father, the quiet roads that always beckoned me. Love, I realized, blossomed in these stolen moments. I had never thought to find it in such an extraordinary form, but there she was, a green-skinned woman from a distant star, with a heart more human than most people I knew. One crisp evening, as a cool breeze swept through the pines, we found ourselves standing by a small pond at the edge of Walter's land. The moon's reflection shimmered on the water, and crickets sang their melody from the grasses. "I never asked," Zarya said softly, eyes fixed on the moonlit ripples. "What did you think when you first saw me, when I crashed onto your truck?" I blew out a gentle breath, remembering the terror, the awe. "Honestly," I said, "I was terrified, shocked. But I couldn't look away. You were so desperate, so alone. I wanted to help you." She turned, meeting my gaze. "You have changed my life," she whispered. "I was so certain I would die that night. Yet here we are." I reached for her hand, our fingers intertwining. The faint luminescence of her skin in the moonlight astounded me, a reminder of how blessed and peculiar my life had become. In that hush, We leaned closer, the night air tingling with anticipation. Our lips met, a gentle, tentative kiss that spoke of shared hopes and quiet gratitude. The pond shimmered with reflected starlight, as though the universe bore silent witness to our union. Any fear of Dracaran retaliation, any worry about alien threats, faded into insignificance. At length, we pulled apart, breath mingling in the cool air. I saw tears glisten in her eyes, and I felt my own heart swell with emotion. "Zarya," I whispered, "I don't know what the future holds. But I do know that as long as we stand together, we can face whatever comes." She smiled through tears, lifting a hand to caress my cheek. "Yes," she replied, voice trembling with hope. Together. Thus did our strange, beautiful story find new meaning on that quiet ranch, beneath the cosmic tapestry overhead. We knew challenges would come, and perhaps a day would arrive when we would face the Dracaran circle again, or unravel the artifact's deeper mysteries. But for tonight, we embraced the peace we had fought so hard to claim. In each other, we found refuge from Earth's hostile conditions, from the storm that first brought us together, and from the uncharted galaxies that stretched beyond mortal comprehension. And so, our tale ends not in sorrow or fear, but in the gentle promise of a new dawn, where two souls, one human, one alien, would walk hand in hand toward an unwritten future, guided by love, trust, and the enduring belief that even in the darkest night, hope can shine like a solitary star.